My name is Magdy Madkour. I have the privilege to say this session. Well, I will actually introduce very rapidly our speakers. We have a long session with 4 speakers, and we need to finish by 8 p.m. so that you can relax and enjoy the music in the Great Hall at 8 p.m. Right. This session actually is about feeding billions and the policies and strategies that are required to enable or to provide the enabling environment for feeding billions. In this session, we have 4 eminent speakers. Maybe half an hour talk would not be enough, but I had a promise from the 4 speakers that we can stick to time, and each will present his topic in 20 minutes, and this would leave us with 10 minutes at the end for maybe discussion and question from the floor. To start with, the first presentation is from Professor Adel Beltagi, and I think Professor Adel Beltagi is known to a great number of people in this hall. Professor Beltagi was the former Minister of Agriculture and Land Reclamation, and he is actually the chair of the International Desert Development Commission, IDDC. Among a lot of positions he headed, I would just briefly mention some of them. He is the head of the Agriculture and Food Research Council at the Academy of Scientific Research and Technology in Egypt. He is a board member and actually acting as the head of the board of the Library of Alexandria. And he's also a professor in the Institute for Arid Land that belongs to Ain Shams University. He was also the chair of GFAR and the Director General of ICARDA, for whom that is based, actually he was based in Syria, in Aleppo. Also, he was the director and the board chair of the Agriculture Research Center in the Ministry of Agriculture in Egypt. He is the fellow of the University of Wales and the chair of the executive board of ACSAD, board member of the Millennium Ecosystem Board. He has also been awarded Al-Istiqlal Medal by His Majesty King Abdullah II of Jordan, and also awarded the Sultan Qaboos First Class Order for Culture and Science and Arts for his contribution to the development of agriculture in the dry areas, and also awarded the Egyptian State Recognition Prize Jaiz al-Dawla al-Taqdiriyya in 2008. He's been also elected as a member of l'Institut d'Egypte that was founded in 1798, and he has authored more than 180 research papers published internationally. Professor Beltagi, the floor is yours.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be with you now, and I hope that the only difference, if we did have this session starting at 6:30 and now, is the speed. And therefore we'll go fast on issues which is of importance because of time. I would like, first of all, to speak about where we are now, because here we are talking about towards sustainable food security in Egypt, policies and practice. In order to know, to move toward sustainable development, you need to know what is around you. Therefore, from the global sense, the whole world is subject to climate change, which is rapidly going to give us around 4 centigrades. There is a projection in certain scenarios that this will be by year 2040 to 50. It means that the increase in temperature is moving very fast. Climate change is going to affect agricultural productivity. It will affect water, ecosystem, extreme weather events, risk of abrupt major irreversible changes in climate, And as you can see from this slide, the more the red, the darker red, it means it comes up to 50% reduction in productivity of all the crops, which will be, and our area, you can see it's very, the red is very dark, therefore between 30% to 50% reduction in the production of the existing genetical makeup and the existing varieties up till now. We have as well an impact of increased oil price on food price, and coupled with this, of course, will be the melting of the poles and the increase of the sea level, which will affect the delta. There was a study for about 80 deltas in the world. The Nile Delta and the Mekong River are the most threatened in the world. And therefore, we need to do something about this because we will have about 6 million, from 3 to 6 million people who has to move inside Egypt because of this increase. Superimposed on this as well, a surge in food prices, the financial tsunami, the subsidy of the OECD countries, which goes up to $312 billion, which is affecting small farmers in the developing countries, which is detrimental. The nexus between food and water and energy, which exist, and they are totally interlinked. Therefore, any increase in oil prices will affect the inputs of agriculture, being fertilizers, and we are talking about tractors, we are talking about transport and everything. Let me move to the water availability and water stress, which will come, and this is a projection to 2025. Egypt among the countries which will be affected, severely affected, and as we can see here, all this flashing area, it is part of the West Asia, North Africa, and Egypt is in this one region. And as we can see, we are moving toward not only water poverty. Water poverty starts after 1,000 cubic meter per person. And now we are moving down to 500. Any number under 500, it's acute water poverty. And that's what's in Jordan. Jordan, for instance, we are talking about 170 cubic meter of water, while in the United States it will be 17,000 cubic meter, and the world average is 7,000. Therefore, the dry areas will get drier, as we say usually. This is the water stress index, and we can see Egypt here is one of the extreme stress conditions. But the projection, despite all this, the projection of food prices will be an increase. People may be deceived of, a drop down in the prices of all agricultural commodities, but this is not going to last because we have an increase of population which is moving to 9 billion people in this planet, far beyond the carrying capacity of this small planet, and therefore you will have a pressure on demand for food, and you will end up having this. I was talking about climate change, a lot of effort. We have effort, international effort. We had something called the IPCC for report 4. The 5th report came out in Yokohama, which is even support all the reports which came before, that we are going and moving faster and faster in the impact of high temperature. That's why in Sendai, there was a framework for disaster and risk reduction. And Japan, again, for the second time after Kyoto, they were making a good effort. The emperor has attended with this meeting to show up the commitment. A total population in the Mediterranean, and I'm just saying this to see, I'm coming close to our region, there is a quick increase. It's only the Arab countries in the Mediterranean. You are talking about 250 million population. The women in agriculture, we have at least the average will be about 46%, but there is max of 69, and the minimum figures may be in Jordan and Lebanon. Employment and migration issue, if we talk about availability in the region which we are living here, I'm talking about the Mediterranean region, there will be a demand. I mean, the young people of age 15 to 64, they will amount to 156 million in the MENA region, and only at that time there will be 24 million in the European Union, in 27 countries in the European Union. And this put a demand that it will tell you that you need to create at least 15 million jobs by 2020 to maintain job employment for the young people. Urban population are increasing. I mean, the bigger circle here, Cairo, it's beyond 10 million population. The three slides which I will come through very quickly show you the changing proportion of the population between 10 and 24. This is the picture in 1980. Then more than 30% is green, and 20 to 30% is the dark pink or orange. Let me go through this very quickly. 2015, this is the situation, and you can see Egypt as well here. We are around 30%, and then it move on to 2050 projection, and we still there with 30%. And actually, if you look at the picture in the Mediterranean, you will find that the Arab Mediterranean countries could jump in 2050 to nearly 390 million, while in Europe, the total increase at that time will be 197. This will mean that there will be tension, there will be political tension, there will be out-migration, and this will be forced, and this will affect stability, because we talked about any food crisis will impact political security as well as food security, and it's interlinked with financial issue as well. Let me just go directly to Egypt and give you a couple of examples here. I talked about population. Population in Egypt is moving beyond 90 million. We are now 90 million, 0.5. And this is double the number of its population in 1980. It is anticipated that we will be about 137 million by year 2050. Egypt is the most populous country in Central West Asia, North Africa, and Siwana, the Mediterranean, and the second in Africa. And the demographic pressure is great. I mean, we have one of the world's most densely populated areas. We are talking about 1,500 persons per square kilometer. This increase in population will affect the proportion of land which belong to the people, education. It will affect health, housing, transport, and all other aspects of life, and therefore it will affect the social security. Presently, 40% of the population is under $2 a day, and we have 20% is about $1 a day. Then the issue here, before I get into other, that we have to be very careful in Egypt, because we have, with the youth, with this increased number of youth, you have either an opportunity or liability. If this youth are not going to have plus K, which is knowledge, then, and if they are not going to be strengthened like this, they will be a time bomb for this country, because they can deflect totally. But the opportunity will come if they are well educated. Then you can go away from this liability. Then the issue of knowledge is very important. This is the urban to rural distribution as we have it here in Egypt. I'm not going to talk more than that. We have developed a sustainable agricultural strategy for 2030. And this strategy is aiming at a revival in economical and social aspects which relate to the agricultural sector. We are seeking a very dynamic agricultural sector which will be able to move very fast and will focus and on the welfare of the rural poor. And this is the vision of this strategy. As far as the mission is to modernize Egyptian agriculture, to fulfill our food security, as well as to increase the standard of living of the population in the rural area. And this will happen through efficient or optimizing the use of natural resources, as well as to invest the particularity of our different geographical regions in Egypt, what we call eco-regional systems. We divided Egypt to 5 agroecological zones. But as well as, it's very important that we have a geopolitical position which we can use, and this is very important in the future. This is a division of the area. I'm not going to talk about this because it's in Arabic, but in order to do this, we have gone through a lot of work on reform in the institutions, starting by the Ministry of Agriculture, the cooperatives, even the private sector dealing with agriculture, how they will interact together, how can we put legislation which will enable this interaction, not only enable it, but strengthen in the future the people who would like to invest in agriculture. I will come to this later. And therefore, this is the main objective of this strategy, is to optimize the use of our agricultural resources and the natural resources, increase productivity per unit of land and area, and land and water, as well as to achieve the highest degree of food security from the fundamental products. I don't want to, of course, this include as well increase or improve the environment for agricultural investments, and to improve the level, the conditions, and the prosperity in the rural area, and decrease the poverty level. In the strategy, we have done this through either modalities which relate to the reform, institutional reform, or by putting new legislations which will enable us to fulfill this program, as well as with different programs which it's a development program and investment programs. This is some parameters of what is going to be done and how we can measure the impact of this business, because we had a business plan as well on this, is that we will look at the rate of growth in the agricultural sector, the rate of exportation, and the change which will happen in the productivity per unit of fadan or meter, as well as per 1 cubic meter of water, as well as the rate of self-sufficiency and the rate of increasing job opportunities. Without getting into details here, but in the short term, until 2018, we were planning to add about 1.3 million acres by land reclamation, as well as we will improve the irrigation, on-farm irrigation, increase the standard of living by 20%, as well as increase the investments. It could come up to 45 billion Egyptian pound, as well as increase the income of the acre, as well as reduce water use by 40%, All of this, for example, in wheat, you can move to 74% self-sufficiency. We'll come back to this. Of course, you are familiar with this slide. This is the new sustainable goals which the United Nations is putting for all the world, and the leaders in the world has accepted. For us, as in agriculture, we are interested in number 1, which is end of poverty. We are interested in number 9, which is managing natural resources assets. This is agriculture, managing water and biodiversity, and managing managing the land and water. As well as we are very much interested in number 5, which is ensure food security and good nutrition. Let me just go directly in an overview. On a practical sense, we have several plans in the strategy, but as well as we organized these slides just to give you a very quick idea. We have a limited arable land in Egypt and water resources. We had about 8 million acres to feed and clothe 90 million people, which is a hard equation. But we have as well in water resources, we have only 55 billion cubic meters of water. 75% of it will go to agriculture. Then we need to modernize the production system. We need to generate innovative technology and information service, improvement of the business environment, including efficient market and value chain. Optimizing water use efficiency in the old and new land. Here we are talking about 8 million acres in total, which could be modernized. We'll come to it and slide in a second. Increase production, reduce imports, raising value-added activities, linking a small farmer to market, which is very important. I think I don't want to get into the cereal dependency or food insecurity here, but this, as you can see, the agro-trade balance is not in the favor of countries like Algeria or Egypt. But let me move directly to the Nile Delta and the Valley, account for about 85% of the agricultural output. The Egyptian desert land account for about 15% of the agriculture output. This is the average yield in Egypt is relatively high compared by several countries, and this didn't come from the sky. It's hard work of people in agricultural research in Egypt, in universities, in the Agricultural Research Center, in the Desert Research Center, and they come to this high level of productivity in different crops. I think because of time, I have to move fast, but I mean, aquaculture, Egypt is considered number 8 worldwide, especially inland aquaculture. We are moving as well toward marine aquaculture by putting cages in the Mediterranean, and maybe later it will be in the Red Sea as well. We need to know the market opportunities as well as the profit and move for it, and therefore it's very important for us to look at the value and try to see where is the investment should go. I don't want to get into, I don't want to get into the, one thing I would like to elaborate here is that, yes, we are seeking self-sufficiency, but Egypt exports $4 billion worth of fresh vegetables and crops and ornamentals. This is a very high income, and it could be easily not doubled, it could be tripled. And meanwhile, you can work as well in increasing the production of the strategic crops, and therefore you can come to 80 or 70% of self-sufficiency. The quality of food is very important. Expanding the resources for agriculture, we are talking about land. Let me take you directly to some of the major programs which we want to do. Is in a program for land reclamation. Let me stop for this slide. This slide here in the last year and a half, We had 7 new laws with this strategy. It's already been issued. And the first law is for cooperative law, which will allow the cooperative to be commercial, and therefore they can be for-profit organization. And this is very important because the cooperative can go out in the newly reclaimed area and they can develop land. As well, farmer health insurance has been already presidential law, which has been endorsed by the parliament, and agriculture takaful law, which is the insurance law. We didn't have any insurance law in this country, as well as contract farming, farmer pension, fishing, and fishery law. Again, because of time, I will move very fast just to give you the highlight of this couple of slides which is coming. The land reclamation program is one of our major programs. Here we are talking about 1 million acres. We are talking about the majority of it will be aquifers, shallow water aquifers, around 300 meters to very deep water aquifers. The areas is in the desert. I'll give you one example here from about 10 slides. Each site of the sites which is selected we looked at land and water, as well as what source of crops which is going to be there, and what will be the expected return in 5 years, and then if you invest, when you are going to get your money back. All this has been developed in details, site by site, for all the sites which is supposed to be for land reclamation. And this Moghra region has saline water, therefore we suggested things like date, olives, and figs, as well as fish farming and cycling the water for fodder after that. It's a closed system with putting factories for fish exportation. This is a marine production. I'm not going to stop at these different sites of the land reclamation. Time does not allow, but we will use crops which will take less water and give you high cash, but with the caveat that all these sites will be economically feasible if you have an agro-industry there. Therefore, all the crops which is selected will have a process of add value, which will give you high return for the farmers and job employment for the young people there. As far as the national on-farm modernization of irrigation system, we are going to have about 10 billion cubic meter of water saved, which can be used in the newly reclaimed area. It can be shifted by increasing the water use efficiency from 45% to 80%. And of course, in horticulture, you can go up to more than that. You can go up to 90% in closed system. Of course, this is one slide which gives you all the systems, laser levelers, even long furrows, and the rest of low energy irrigation techniques. Therefore, we don't spend irrigation. Here is very sophisticated. Here, the water use efficiency in hydroponic system like this is more than 95% efficient. Linking farmer to market is a very major program for us. And this is empower the farmers. It cut the intermediate. It empower the people to link directly to the market by putting stores and cooling facilities, grading, packing, processing, and power generation. I mentioned the integrated fish and livestock farming, and this is the one I mentioned in Moghra. Of course, we are dealing with a lot of international funding agencies like the World Bank, IFAD, the African Bank, and others. And as I mentioned before, we are, the estimated social and economical development impact will be in agriculture, increase of agriculture growth rate, agriculture exportation, productivity, rate of creating job, rate of self-sufficiency. There's a one point I will say, and probably this is a major point I will say, and then we'll close, is a social poverty. Financial poverty is one thing, but the social poverty and the intellectual poverty is the worst, because ignorance is the killer of any nation which would like to build itself. And therefore, here we are talking about lack of knowledge, inefficient systems for education, lack of ability to express yourself fully. And this is the United Nations. The degree of happiness of any human being is to express himself fully. And if his brain does not function well, if he does not have this knowledge, he will never do that. Then science and innovation is very important. There is a hope. We are not going to go towards this desertification. We can use modern science with all the nanotechnology, the genomics, the biotechnology, new modes of remote sensing, as well as with computer science. We can really move forward with vision, with imagination, with creativity and innovation. We know that knowledge is power. You cannot go up like this. He's going and putting his leg on books and knowledge to go up. And this is the only escalator which will take you there. Empowerment to increase the coping capacity of a nation is very important. And I will close by saying this circle in the middle, which called the human resources, are the most important resource for a country like Egypt. Yes, water and land resources are important, but the human being in this country are a very precious element of these resources. Policy and legislation, as well as technology, has to be there. To sum up the whole strategy, it's on one hand to increase productivity for crops and animals. The other side is to export-oriented agriculture, increase water productivity, and use of ICTKM. And I do thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Beltagi. And we will keep the questions to the end of the session, as we agreed. Our second speaker is Clemens Breisinger, and he's Senior Research Fellow in the Development Strategy and Governance Division at IFPRI, the International Food Policy Research Institute. He's also the country program leader for Egypt. Since 2010, Clemens also led the Middle East and North Africa team, which provides knowledge, strengthens capacity, and aims at influencing policy and investment decisions for an Arab world free of poverty and malnutrition. Clemens also has a research that covers a broad range of issues related to the roles of agriculture and mineral resources for economic development, building resilience to crisis and climate change, and designing policies for improving food and nutrition security. He received his PhD in agricultural economics from the University of Hohenheim in 2006, where he also worked as a research and teaching associate since 2003. Clemens, please, and I would beg you to stick with time.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Magdy. Also, let me start by congratulating Dr. Beltagi not only for a very comprehensive presentation, but as far as I can tell, he managed that nobody actually fell asleep. So I'll try to aim for that too. Make sure you stay awake. Very good. All right, basically I'm going to do two things here tonight. The first is I'm going to give you the latest results of IFPRI's and its partners' impact model, which basically looks into the future of food security, food supply, food production, and nutrition. And then secondly, I would like to highlight a couple of possible policy solution initiatives globally, but also here, particularly in the Arab world and in Egypt. Now let's take a look to a couple of food security scenarios towards 2050. And the results that I'm going to show you are fresh, and they are, as I mentioned, built on IFPRI's impact model. And it's a joint initiative, really, with many CGIAR centers and others. Now, this quantitative analysis is built on a series of models which basically link many things that the previous speakers has mentioned. It takes into account economic growth, it takes into account water scarcity, it takes into account changes in diets, it takes into account climate change issues, and so on and so forth. So basically this presentation is, has been done by my colleagues from the Environment Production Technology Division. And we start off by looking at a couple of possible scenarios in terms of socioeconomic drivers. Now, we don't know how many people will live in the world in 2050 or in 2100, but there are estimates. And on the left-hand side in that graph, you can see low range, high range. So it will anywhere between 13 billion and 8 billion, that's the estimate. And also in terms of GDP growth, the wealth of nations, we don't know, but we can do scenarios, we can do assumptions, and on the right-hand side, you'll see those trends too. Why am I showing you this? Because all the results of the model that I'm going to show you in just a couple of minutes are building on some kind of medium pathway. So we are not expecting very optimistic, very pessimistic, but we are building our food security scenarios on kind of an average future kind of GDP and population expected growth. Now, how about changes in diets? As in the many other slides that you will see, we divide the world in different parts. There's Latin America, there's MENA, there is also North America, Europe, Sub-Saharan Africa, and so on and so forth. So I think what makes most sense in going through those slides is I'll highlight the MENA region, since we are in the MENA region here specifically. So you can see like the 3 bars in each region depict the situation 2010, 2030, and 2050. And you see like how the per capita calorie consumption is expected to change on the x-axis. And you also see by the different colors of the bars where the calories will come from, like from cereals, from vegetables, from meat, etc. And so you can see that in the MENA region, as in all other regions except for Europe and North America, the per capita calorie consumption is expected to increase. And in the MENA region specifically, there is even a very high share of calories coming from cereals, and that won't change. So the implications of this is people will eat more calories, we have more people in the world, and we have GDP growth. Now, not surprisingly, because of these 3 and other things, the total global food demand is expected to increase quite dramatically. And here, the different lines by the different colors show you which kind of food items are expected to grow the most and the least. Now, for cereals, we are not expecting, because it's a staple crop, and as incomes grow, people don't, and the elasticity, as economists call it, is relatively low, income elasticity. So cereals are expected to grow the least. But then if you look at oilseeds and fruits and vegetables, we see a massive growth. So there's a big need to produce more food, and that's not a surprise. Now, growth in global cereal production, again, you see like there will be more areas that will need to be planted, but also yields will have to go up. And so just to put everything in the global picture, like the big blue circle is maize. So this is like the most produced and consumed cereal in the world, followed by wheat and a couple of others, and that is not expected to change. Now, just to understand the model a little bit, so these are the basic assumptions now that we have. So now there are like 3 kinds of models that we take into account. there are like global circulation models that tell us a little bit about the future climate. There are also crop models that tell us what is actually happening to yields and crops and agricultural production due to those different changes. And then there are the economic models that tell us like what are the implications for our economies and our people in terms of income, in terms of nutrition, and other things. Now, let me just show you a couple of results of that modeling suite. Now, some of the key messages that I have here is, yes, climate change is hurting agriculture production, but those effects are very different between world regions, and they're also very different by crops. So in some part of the world, and for some crops, yields are actually expected to increase, and land in some parts of the world that cannot be cultivated right now will be able to be cultivated. So there is like these mixed effects. The negative effects, according to our projections, will be more important, but let's not forget there are also crops that actually win, and this is what you see here on this slide. So basically, you can see that in the expected yields are the gray bars by 2050, and then like the red dots or the colored dots show you how the yields will change given different climate change scenarios. And you can see that, yes, in some cases the yields are expected to fall, especially in the Middle East, North Africa, but also in sub-Saharan Africa. But if you look at the fourth like bar to your left, which is the former Soviet Union, is actually expected, because it's getting warmer and stuff, that yields are going to increase. And we know Russia, Ukraine are huge producers of grains. So I just wanted to point this out. There are really like different effects in different parts, and also very different effects for different crops. So here you see like the different effects for different crops. You can see maize is hit very hard in all parts of the world, whereas wheat, again, is kind of mixed, overall negative, but in some parts of the world, again, we see positive effects. Now, what about net cereal trade? Net cereal trade and climate change. So this is particularly important for this part of the world. Now, we know that, and you see it again on the gray bars, like if the gray bars go up, then the countries or the regions are net food exporters. That means they export more than they import. Whereas when the bars go down, then those regions import more than they export and produce at the same time. Now you can see for the Middle East, North Africa, the bar that's going down the furthest, the fifth to your left, is already very low, and there's a huge import dependency, and as you can see, that will dramatically increase in the future. Whereas in other parts of the world, let's take North America, which is the highest bar that goes up. So North America is expected to increase its food trade surplus dramatically. So again, very different impacts, different parts of the world. Now here's an indicator about hunger, and that's also one of the model results. So the good news is that in all parts of the world, hunger is expected to go down because, there's this economic growth, and there are all these other good things happening. So the gray bar is 2010, the blue is 2050 with no climate change, and then the orange one is 2050 with climate change. So the basic story here is, yes, hunger will go down, but with climate change, it won't go down as much as without climate change. Now, and some more good news here is that we also ran a couple of scenarios to see what can actually help to mitigate those negative effects of climate change. And so this scenario that I'm showing you today is about technology. How can technology in agriculture help mitigating some of those negative effects? So, and we look at different kind of technologies like improving drought tolerance, improving or increasing heat tolerance, and a couple of other like technologies. And you can see that in all cases to your left, crop yields, if we invest in those technologies, that can actually really help to smoothen some of those negative effects, and in some cases even turn it into positive effects. And then at the same time, and you see that on your right-hand side, if we get the technology right, then we can also limit the negative effects on the poor and the hungry. Now, the takeaway messages from this first part of the presentation is there is really significant differences across regions and across different scenarios. The second message is really we can do something about it. No, there is technology out there that can be employed. However, to make sure that those technologies work, we need to have the right policies in place, and we need to have functioning markets and the right decisions to be taken by policymakers. Otherwise, that technological advances will not probably help too much. And so let me get to the second part of the presentation, and it will be much shorter, and I'll really focus on three kind of policy initiatives, policy research initiatives. With those initiatives, they are all led by IFPRI. We are hoping to influence policy making at global, regional, and country level. Now, a lot of the policies and solutions are discussed in IFPRI's annual flagship report. It's called the Global Food Policy Report. It gives a very good, I find, overview of current policies and policy changes and policy recommendations going forward. So this is the latest 2016 Global Food Policy Report. I invite you to take a look online, and it has several chapters that deal with the challenges and opportunities that I have just mentioned. So there's a chapter on food loss and food waste, water management, soils, diets, green energy, regional development, value chains, and climate change and smallholders. Now, I would also like to take this opportunity to invite you all to the Global Food Policy Report launch in Cairo on March the 10th. That's a joint collaboration between IFPRI and USAID. We'll be happy to send you an invitation. Please get in touch with us, and it will also be announced on our website. And to take this one step further, this Cairo launch of the Global Food Policy Report will be only the first seminar in a seminar series that IFPRI and USAID are organizing together. Will be on a monthly basis, and we really want to stimulate the policy debate in Egypt with evidence, research-based findings going forward. Now, the second thing that I would like to briefly mention is on the regional level, with a couple of partners that you can see down there. We have initiated a knowledge platform. It's called Arab Spatial, and you're welcome to visit that platform. Basically, it's doing two things. The first thing is it really monitors some of the key indicators of development, focusing on food security, nutrition, and poverty. And so we are in the process, as the SDG Goals have been defined, but the specific indicators have not yet been defined. We are working, we're waiting for that, and of course IFPRI is also involved in the process. But we're really making this, what is so far a mapping tool for food security, we are taking it one step further and make this a monitoring tool for the SDGs, particularly in the Arab world. And the second component of this platform, and here you can just see a couple of maps that you can interactively build yourself, use in your publications, use in your communications, and also for your analytical work. Just a couple of examples. The second thing that we are doing with our partners is what we call the Arab Food and Nutrition Security Block. So there, every 2 weeks, we invite like eminent, prominent, and key experts from the region, but also internationally, to contribute their science-based, research-based opinions on issues related to food security and nutrition in the Arab world. And you can see a couple of faces that may be familiar. Also, Mahmoud Solh, Director General of ICARDA, has contributed. And so please take a look, and we hope that you will follow this and perhaps also contribute your comments or maybe even a blog story at some point. And now the final slide is on IFPRI's Egypt Strategy Support Program. So basically, IFPRI is an organization of like 550 people, and we have offices around the world. And I'm happy to say that Egypt is the latest addition to that collection of country-based programs. We recently had our launch in Cairo on March the 1st. We also had a research priority setting where we look at and involve Egyptian policymakers, researchers, analysts, NGOs to really see what are the research gaps in this country. So please take a look. I would also like to say that this strategy support program is heavily supported and financed by USAID, and we are working in close collaboration with ICARDA and others going forward. So thank you very much. Please contact us for any information at www.egyptssp or IFPRI's website in general, or just send us an email. Thanks a lot for your braveness.
20 minutes on the dot. That's good. Thank you, Clemens. Our next speaker is Dr. Mahmoud Solh, a close friend and colleague. Dr. Mahmoud Solh is Director General of the International Center for Agricultural Research in Dry Areas. Dr. Solh assumed the office of the Director General of ICARDA in May 2006. He has been associated with the International Agricultural Research and Development in the Dry Areas since 1972, when he became a staff member of the Arid Land Agricultural Development, ALAD, program of the Ford Foundation in the Near East. He has served as Director of Plant Production and Protection Division at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO, for 4 years. Prior to that, he served ICARDA for nearly 16 years in various capacities as a lentil breeder and as a regional coordinator for the Nile Valley and Red Sea Regional Program, as an Assistant Director General for International Cooperation. Dr. Solh was a professor of genetics and plant breeding at the American University of Beirut, Lebanon, between 1980 to 1986. He holds a PhD in genetics from the University of California in Davis, United States. Professor Solh, the floor is yours. Yeah. And may I remind you?
Thank you, Dr. Majdi. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Distinguished participants, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. We have... You have a problem? No. Okay. Okay. You have heard about, from two distinguished speakers, one on the global picture and the strategies, and one on the modeling. And now what I'm going to talk to you, what type of action we can do on the ground to enhance food security. I'm sure you know, we have lots of technologies, and the problem of technologies, most of them are shelved, very little are finding their way to the farmers. And my focus, yes, will be on two major projects, one on the food security in the Arab world, and the other one is in food security in sub-Saharan Africa, focusing on wheat, but I will really focus on the dissemination of technology to farmers. The first project is enhancing food security in the Arab countries, involving 10 Arab countries. We are in the second phase now. This is supported by the Arab Fund for Economic and Social Development, the Kuwaiti Fund for Arab Economic Development, the Islamic Development Bank, and the OPEC Fund for International Development. The first phase is actually finished in 2013-2015, and we are now in the second phase. This phase involves scientists, researchers, farmers, extension agents, as well as policymakers. We have really major components here, dissemination to farmers of improved wheat production technologies. You know, wheat in the Arab world is a major stable crop. And when we look at the per capita consumption of wheat in the Arab world is about 165 kilograms per person. And in some countries like Morocco, this number jumps to 235 kilograms per person. You can tell how important this wheat in terms of food security. So another component is applied research, and then we have a young scientist program to enhance capacity development. We talk about three major agroecologies here: rain-fed agriculture, supplemental irrigation, and irrigated agriculture. What you see in this slide, I hope the figures are clear to you, but we'll see them in more details. I'm not going to talk, I will talk country by country, but I want to tell you, on the average, the increase across the 6 or 7 countries that we started with was 28%. This is the increase in the wheat productivity. When we look at the maximum increase, the average across the countries was 75%. So the idea here was to bridge the yield gap between what the farmers are getting and the potential productivity that you can get in farmers' field, not in research. And when we look at country by country, the farmer practices, this is the productivity. When we look at the improved practices, look at the range. You are talking about really a range from 13% in Morocco to 23% in Tunisia. And when we look at the maximum yield increase, the range is jumping really here from 25% to 97%. And that tells you how much we are really losing in terms of enhancing food security. This is really with respect to the rain-fed conditions in these countries. If we move to countries where supplemental irrigation is possible, when I say supplemental irrigation, I mean 1 or 2 irrigations during the season when there is a drought. When there is drought, in order to break the cycle of drought, you really give it 1 irrigation. And this way you break the cycle of drought. And when we look at the countries where supplemental irrigation is available, we can see that the range here from 13 to 56%, and the maximum productivity is really again jumping here from, imagine, from 54% to 98%, which is a tremendous gain. Now, in the irrigated areas, of course, we have really Egypt and Sudan in particular, and look here at the gap, particularly when you look at Sudan. By the way, Egypt is considered to be among the highest wheat producers per unit area in the world. It's irrigated. The Egyptian farmer is very progressive in many ways. When we look at the increase in bridging the yield gap, here the improved practice gave 25% more. In Sudan, it gave 67% more. And the maximum increase in Egypt was 56% more. And in Sudan, it was 147% more. And when we look at I'm going to give you the example of Egypt, what happened in the Sharia province. I just came actually from a workshop with farmers in the Sharia province, hosted by the governor, His Excellency, the governor of Sharia, where we really have seen the accomplishments in the field. This is really the raised bed versus the flat bed irrigation versus the furrow irrigation. Looking at this slide, you know that there is water saving. This is now the emerging wheat on the raised bed. This is the advantage of the raised bed. Reduced applied water by 30%, increased yields by 25%, reduced seed rate by 50%, and increased water use efficiency by 72%. In 2 years, or in 3 years, this has jumped to 85,000 faddans. This one, I prepared this slide. I was so impressed yesterday, when I learned that this has jumped now to 300,000 faddans. And what I want to commend also, I would like to commend the Egyptian government and the Ministry of Agriculture and the National Academy of Science, where they are really upscaling this technology from Sharia to another 22 provinces, and the plan based on the wheat national campaign is going to be about 1 million hectare of raised bed, not only in wheat and in other crops, in order for Egypt to save lots of water, which you need badly. This is more or less similar slide I'm not going to go through, but this shows you the jump in the adoption, which is very important. I'm very happy to be having with us here Dr. Atif Suwailim, who is really the guru of this machine, which I did not talk about because of the limitation of time. This machine is now manufactured locally for the raised bed, and it is now being exported to other countries in the region. So this is a breakthrough that we consider Egypt is playing a big role in this area, which is very, very important. Now, as I mentioned, the Egyptian government in 3 years invested 8.7 million Egyptian pounds in order to expand this technology from the Sharia province to another 22 provinces, which is extremely important. So Tunisia did the same. Look at now how we are closing the yield gap in farmers' fields. This is in Fernana province in Tunisia under rain-fed conditions. What I want to show to you, the green is the level of productivity that you have, the number of farmers. Look at the number of farmers. The number of farmers here, you can see here, the number of farmers, they were getting, most farmers were getting 2 to 3 tons, but some of them were getting -2 tons. Then this has shifted now. You have more farmers getting much more, I would say, productivity than before. Sorry. I don't want to go back. Why? Sorry. Okay. This is the other example in Morocco. You can see that the blue bars here are moving to the higher productivity range. So the farmers are now producing much more than they used to be in the past. Coming back to the dissemination methodology. We do have 3 different dissemination methodology. One, what we call is the proximity dissemination methodology, and this is the mass dissemination methodology which was taken place in Egypt. Then we have the platform farmer field schools methodology, where it has been covered by 4 countries, and then the cluster dissemination, which has been really practiced in Tunisia. What's the difference between the different methodologies? The mass dissemination means you really have a large number of extension agents where you can really have so many demonstrations. And the number of demonstrations here in 2012 only was 2,500. And I've heard yesterday that this number has jumped to 5,000 demonstrations in farmers' field, which is really very, very impressive. So this is really important. The other one is related to platform dissemination. Here the number, what you really have farmers group. Here the number of extension agent is usually limited. And therefore you have farmer groups around I would say around one probably extension agent then can really work with them on regular basis. The other one, different groups of farmers. We have a lead farmer in one area that also helps others. This is the cluster dissemination method. Now, this is one example of a lead farm field. The lead farm field, a progressive farmer would be evaluating different, let's say, disease-resistant wheat varieties, 1 hectare each. He can be demonstrating disease-tolerant grain legume, for example, varieties. He can have one whole plot on conservation agriculture. So he's more of a mini research station that he is really demonstrating to the farmers the different varieties, the different practices. This is done really in 2 provinces in Tunisia. This is the dissemination methodology. Sorry, am I? No. Okay, now these, of course, in this process, you have to use different dissemination tools. You have to have field visits, traveling workshops, meeting, field days. You have to have the media, TV programs. The internet is important, the indirect linkage with the mobile phone to tell the farmers want to do supplemental irrigation. You have to have leaflets and so forth. These days, with the media as you know it and the knowledge base that you have, you can help farmers a lot with the different tools that are available. This is the example of one of the field days that you have in farmer's field. If you see the farmer, you can see how vigorous is this wheat field. When you see the farmer is really almost, 2/3 covered with the wheat crop. But this is the number of farmers that have been trained through farmer field schools, field days, and farmer traveling workshops, which was really here in 3 years about 42,000 farmers, which is a tremendous number of farmers. This is also honoring the outstanding farmers in the cultivation of wheat in Egypt, Sudan, and Syria. His Excellency, the former Minister of Agriculture, with the President of the National Academy of Science, rewarding the Egyptian farmers. Also, the Minister of Agriculture of Sudan, and the others, also Minister of Agriculture in Syria, and others were rewarding the farmers. Just to tell you the return on investment of research. Now, already in phase 1, we can say the gain in wheat from working in one province only was $54 million in 3 countries, Egypt, Tunisia, and Jordan. In Syria and Sudan and Morocco, this was about $61 million US, and the total investment of the project was only $5 million. So the return on investment is tremendous, and if the country upscale, it will be even more. Let's come to the other projects in sub-Saharan Africa, which covers 12 sub-Saharan African countries. This is a project supported by the African Development Bank with the 3 major hubs for major research, Ethiopia, Nigeria, and Sudan. I'm not going to go through the other 12 countries, but they are in front of you. And here, the approach is that we have really what we call innovative platforms for transfer of technology. And here, of course, I would say about 16 varieties were released in in 2 years' time, 8 in 2 years, and 9 are candidates for 15 and 16. And look at the increase in productivity in Ethiopia, as well as in Sudan and in Nigeria. Look at the pinkish, which is the traditional farmer productivity, and then the improved, which is the blue productivity. These are the different varieties. Similarly, when we look at the other 22 other improved countries, 9 released in 2015 in the other countries, and 13 candidates for the 15-16 season. This is really one of the field days that I've seen, I attended in Sudan, in the Jazeera, and I want to tell you the productivity of the Jazeera scheme used to be only about 2.5 tons per hectare. Why? Because of the short season, because of the heat. In Sudan, the season is only 90 to 110 days. So barely you can reach 2.5 tons. With this project now of bridging yield gap, 6 tons per hectare were achieved. The Vice President and the Minister of Agriculture were there in the field day, and they now are planning to produce 1 million acre of wheat. This is the example in Nigeria. Look at the average or the farmer's level in red, and the yellow is the improved package. Again, very impressive. In Nigeria, Nigeria imports $4 billion worth of wheat a year. And because we introduced the heat-tolerant varieties from Sudan to Nigeria, they managed to release the 3 varieties with yields 6 to 8 tons per hectare, which is really very, very impressive. This is again in Kano, where we have the innovative platforms as well with many farmers. Now, the transformational achievement of the project really led government to decision to make key policies in shifting, really favoring domestic production as a viable solution for reducing imports and ensuring national food security. I'm not going to talk about these policy issues, but all of these, they already adopted the way of technology transfer, which I will talk about. This is the innovative platforms which involve a value chain approach. What's the innovative platform technology transfer methodology? We have really an innovative, is a physical or virtual forum established to facilitate interaction and learning among stakeholders selected from a commodity chain analysis. So the essence is a commodity value chain approach. This means you are talking about the whole stages from the day you put the seed in the field up till the product goes to the table of the consumer. This is what we really at different stages. So their interaction of the different stakeholders lead to participatory diagnosis of the problem, joint exploration of opportunities, and identification of solutions leading to the generation of agricultural innovation along the targeted commodity chain. Now we have 2 types of innovative platforms. One of them is the strategic innovative platform. These platforms are set at higher level of governance and management hierarchies, and at this level strategies for scaling up are very developed. In other words, when the policymakers are aware of the value of these technologies, they invest for scaling up. The other one is an operational platform, innovative platform. These platforms are set at the grassroots level to respond to target commodity or system of production need for specific market. The operational innovative platform do respond to the strategies developed by the platform. Okay, quickly, what we are talking about, the stakeholders involve the seed, fertilizer, chemicals, researchers, extension, cooperative seed producers, even we have those that are doing the milling. So you have really a wide range of stakeholders involved, as you can see from this slide. Let me this is the example on the number of the different platforms that are doing what I wanted to say. If you see just this slide, the 6 platforms involve about 4,800 farmers in Sudan, Nigeria, 5,000 farmers, and Ethiopia, 4,000 farmers. Let's come to the concluding remarks now. Now, in the concluding remarks, first of all, clearly, you've seen the results of the, what I talked about, 28% increase on the average in the Arab wheat food security project, and the maximum 75%. And the good example of Egypt is a very good way of economizing on water use. No need to repeat that. And in terms of capacity development, about 42,000 participants, among of them 69 were farmers, 69%. Then, of course, spillover wide dissemination by governments in Egypt, Tunisia, Sudan, and Morocco has been effective by moving this technology from one province where we work to other provinces. And I wanted to say the large scale dissemination of technology through innovative platforms in in the sub-Saharan Africa were very important. Now, as I mentioned to you, unless the technology find their way to the farmers, there is no need to invest in research, clearly. So I think that's why it is so important to invest in technology transfer, which is really a bottleneck in most of the developing world, including this part of the world. So I'm not going to talk about the different dissemination platforms. I mentioned to you about them, but most important that we really have to look at extension and technology transfer in the broad sense, not in a narrow sense where we have only an extension agent with a motorcycle or a bike with little information. You have to provide them with facilities, with the media, and so forth. And finally, you need to ensure direct linkage with farmers, which involve regular visits, meetings with farmers, field days, and so forth, and ensure indirect linkage with farmers through the various media operations, including even mobiles. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mahmoud. Our next speaker is Professor Yahya Halim Zaki, the Special Advisor in the Director's Office Sector at Bibliotheca Alexandrina. Dr. Yahya Halim is a professor of radiology at the Faculty of Medicine, Alexandria University. He received his doctorate in radiodiagnosis in 1974 and attended l'Institut National des Sciences et Techniques Nucléaires in France, and received a DEA in science from Paris in 1971. He is the former dean of the Faculty of Medicine, Alexandria University. Today, he stands before you to represent the NGO perspective and reflection on the subject of feeding the world in these days. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, dear Dr. Magdy. Luckily, I'm not agricultural. I'm here as an NGO. And these are survival challenges. Because I'm a doctor, I'm going to talk about... No, thank you. Because I'm not... I'm going to talk about a little bit different subject. Egypt, in particular, faces several challenges. The most important we have is the population increase. Now, in 1948, we were 17 millions. Today, we are 90 millions. That means 5 times the population we had. Figures like these are not confined to Egypt alone, but to a lot of the developing countries. This is because in the 1950s, penicillin was available, affordable, streptomycin, the antibiotic, antihelminths, and all the new drugs, let's say vaccination, and plus, again, the very good dealing with epidemics. To give you an example, to cite one example, is the influenza in 1920s, for most of the persons here do not know, claimed 20 million, the lives of 20 million persons in Europe alone, more than World War I, and globally it claimed 50 million lives. In comparison, the H1N1 or H5N1 claimed just a few thousand lives. This is to much better handling, dealing with these epidemics. Definitely communication tools play an important part of it. And the Ebola crisis, which is by far more dangerous, was much better contained. In the 40s of the last century, there was some kind of equilibrium between the population and the land because of the short lifespan of the individuals. This has been disturbed by the 1950, which I would call revolution of all these antibiotics and all these drugs, and the forecasted industrialization did not yield what was expected of. Well, Egypt population, even at growth rate of different growth rate, by we're today 90 millions. By 2020, we're almost 99 millions or 100 millions. Estimates between 1940 and 2040 or 2050, we cannot assume what they are. There is a big difference, but we all know there is a big increase. It's not Egypt alone, it's the rest of the world together. And if we come to the estimates, what you see in yellow is the industrialized world. However, the developing countries, it will reach by 2050 around 10 billions or more. Now, Egypt's population increased by 2% per year. And this gives us to a slide which I've seen before. Africa by 2050 will double, while Asia will increase by less than 20%. Now, this increase may be assets or may be liabilities. Now, it depends, is it an advantage or a disadvantage? If the population increase, if you see, this slide shows you in 1915 a Ford plant and the assembly line of a simple flywheel, while this is 2015, a Hyundai assembly line. Where are the people? There are no people anymore. This has gone completely, this had changed completely to robots, automatization, and if you think that increase in people, persons, will help, no. Robots are accounted here for, artificial intelligence will be here, and I don't know if whichever stability is, we have to be careful of what's going on. We have, therefore, two main survival challenges, water scarcity and food scarcity, which are definitely related. Amount of water allotted to Egypt in the 1950s was 56 billion cubic meter per year, and rainfall along the coastal region. The average per person was about 3,300 meters per person per year. Today, if we divide by 5, we have 16, that's the last figure. At 90 million, we have 616 cubic meters per person per year. For those who are not familiar, the poverty line is 1,000 meters per person per year, regardless to any other external factors that is irrelevant today. For example, I don't have any figures, but Dr. Adel just said about the climate change and the sea level rise, or whatever is another factor which I don't know what are its implications. About Africa. Africa, since antiquity, has been subjected to droughts. The last severe drought in Africa was in 1979. We did not feel its ill effects in Egypt because the high dam or the reservoir between the dam at Aswan protected us. But we have other factors of scarcity of water. We have seen the sea level rise, diminished rainfall, and diminution of renewable subsoil water, on which if we're going to pump water out in the desert to plant, to irrigate, and if we use it unwisely. Our next problem is food. Egypt is the main importer. This is also building, unplanned buildings on agricultural land are again a major problem that we have. Once we build, we can't take it off again because it has destroyed the land. Now, we have Egypt is the main importer of wheat in the world. Egypt imports a very large amount of what we call beans or horse beans, al-ful, vishya faba, whichever you'd like to tell it. And its oil, we import a very large quantity of basic oil, or it's producing oil for production. In brief, with the population increase, the water scarcity, the food scarcity, we are a population at risk. We are in danger. What can we do? we have to adapt. The problem is we have lived in water lavishness. We are accustomed to water lavishness. We are not sub-Saharan Africa or the countries where water is scarce and scarce from the beginning. So the adaptation will be much more difficult here because we have lived in wealth. How are we going to adapt? Well, let's say that small acts and huge impacts. The Library of Alexandria here, where Archimedes was 2,000 years ago, he said, give me one firm spot on which to stand and I will move Earth. And we can move Earth. We have a case study as an NGO at a small village in the outskirts of Alexandria, who is completely marginalized, who at the end of the water level, partially salty, and very poor agriculture. We tried to do what was impossible into a possible. We have given them the idea of growing hydroponic food, where only 10% of the water to grow the same amount of food, completely more organic and much less water. And these 2 units took 2 days to build, 1,000 plants to grow in less than 1/10 of the space of land needed. From day one, 5 weeks later, 8 weeks, they had growing lettuce. One more bright spot to proudly share were in December, 15 days in December, we built them a hydroponic sprouting chamber to feed their cattle, to give them an idea how to do it. It uses less land, 10% of the water needed to grow the average clover on which they usually feed. It is automated. No more than one person is needed to handle the cycle. And in 14 days, sprouts grew equal to 3 or 4 weeks of land. Day one, day 2, day 3 and 4, day 5, day 5 again, and at the same time we built the armature. Day 6, the germinating barley, and then day 8, day 10, day 14, we had the barley sprouts, we still have the barley sprouts here. That means sustainability, and it's growing. And it's growing. Collecting sheets. The beneficiaries are people who we don't know. The man with the beard here on the far side, is the man who gave us the room. This is in a room, first floor. The other one, the hydroponic unit, was atop of his house, and we have cows and sheep and buffalo happy. What is next? Next, we're trying to build a room which is in 4 hours, if it's ready-made, get a plug and play in 4 hours, and you get a 30 square meter room will give you 250 kilograms of barley sprouts per day, which means 1 ton every 4 days, which means 50 tons in, you multiply 4 days, 50 tons you divide, that's exactly the amount of 1 feddan, half an acre or 4,000 meters, and on about 10% or 12% of the water used, because the feddan of clover uses not less than 5,000 cubic meter of water. Am I correct, Your Excellency? Now, what is this doing here? That's a tuk-tuk. For all those, that's a tuk-tuk. I know. Now, the tuk-tuk here is something very important, because this, now, if we look at as an NGO, we look at community problems. Tuk-tuk helps solve little people problem. But this is not a sustainable development project. This is a personal problem who uses the community to survive upon. Now, well, if you go back, what is the actual benefit? According to the size of the room, of the sprouting chamber, you have cleared 3,000 or 4,000 square meter for cereal growing. Otherwise, you can grow a winter, crop, let's say wheat, barley, what I would say, fool, which is beans, or if you need winter potato. You have employed 1 or 2 persons. You have introduced new and simple technology to completely marginalize people who do not know. The only thing they use electricity for is to watch television. Practically, this is the practical thing we have. You have introduced what is now a very important cooperative work and sustainable community development. Now, we have NGOs. NGOs, what do? They collect some money, and then they go distribute a few blankets. Or they collect money and give food in Ramadan. Or, if you have a better NGO, they give a cow to a providing woman. I say a single mother, etc., all these things. Single in Egypt here means widow, usually. Now, this is very important. No, this is very important. What we do, because single mother means a widow or abandoned by her husband. And now, if you give her a cow or a buffalo, she has to feed it. Now, this is a problem because if she has no land, she has very little land, she has to feed it. If you give her something like that which can help her feed, now you have sustained that, and therefore better education, etc., etc. And this is practically the best thing. If you look at the economics of the sort, you have a good economic program and a good, let's say, sustainability program. Thank you. I will not take more of your time.
Which is good. I owe you 1 minute. Anyway. Well, thank you very much for the speakers of this session. In this session, I think time is running late, and maybe we can entertain 2 questions from the floor. Please identify yourself and to whom the question is addressed.
Kindly use the mics. We have 2 mics here.
Okay, you can maybe go and use the microphone.
My name is Mohammed Hassouna. I'm working in under establishment NGO related to sustainable agriculture. My question going directly to His Excellency Dr. Beltagi about the Agriculture Development Strategy 2030. The strategy stated that the role of the government need to be reduced in terms of agriculture inputs like seeds and fertilizer. Until now, we spend like 9 years in this strategy right now, but still the government dominates the production of seeds, marketing, and distribution for the farmers all over Egypt. When we can see this strategy be achieved on land? Thank you so much.
Thank you. The second question, and then we start answering, please. And please identify yourself and to whom the question is addressed. Please.
Emeritus Professor Ali Abdelnabi, Food Science and Technology Department, Faculty of Agriculture, Alexandria University. I'm asking Dr. Magdy Madkour regarding the...
I'm not a speaker.
Yeah. But
maybe we can address it to the speaker. Yeah. They owe to have your question.
Dr. Beltagi, regarding the genetically modified foods, what about the genetically modified foods? Is it including in the strategy 2030 or not? Thank you.
Okay. I maybe can have the permission from Dr. Beltagi and answer this part because it's in my domain. But Dr. Beltagi, please Can we answer the first question?
Yeah, for the first question you're asking about the heavy hand of the government. Yes, this strategy is minimizing the role of the government, is restructuring the Ministry of Agriculture, and we have issued laws which relate to this. I mean, the law for cooperative is empowering the small farmers to form cooperatives which will act as companies, because the law in Egypt does prevent any cooperative to earn income or to be for-profit organization. Therefore, in this direction, there was going to be a minimization of the structure of the ministry. It's only will focus on policy and research and legislation and the implementation of legislation. And this is the only business which will be left for the government, from the government side. The private sector, this strategy has more of the investment of the private sector rather than the public sector. The government only will focus on human resource development because this is asset, national asset, which has to take responsibility for the government and support for research until the private sector will come and support them. The private-public relationship, there is no public agricultural production in Egypt. Even a small farmer in Egypt is private sector because he doesn't, I mean, the government is out of being a production source. You talked about seeds. The seeds in the States for things like wheat and others, still there is USDA supervises because it doesn't make any profit, and it doesn't unless you are very good at it. And therefore here to sustain, it's only the major crops which is the government is doing. But in Egypt we have a mushrooming of private sector companies which is dealing with seed production in different issues, including maize and other commodities, as well as nurseries in horticulture. This is to answer this. As far as genetic engineering is concerned, Professor Madkour will answer, but as policy aspect, we have approved genetically modified maize to be released in Egypt because you know, if you are familiar with Sesamia critica in maize, which is a very, it damaged all the production of maize. There was a line which will be resistant through genetic engineering. We have approved this. We accommodated the law. There is a biosafety committee in Egypt which was established, what, 1995, and this to give certificates for people to work on this. We are for using the latest in science in agriculture. We cannot modernize agriculture in Egypt unless we depend on new innovations, not only in genomics, but in nanotechnology in the different field, soil-water relationship and others. I think I'll stop here. I'll give the floor to Professor Madkour.
Well, I'd like to thank you because you answered the question anyway. Right, I think it's in the strategy. It's in the new science, as Dr. Beltagi has mentioned. I will take a final question, please. Yeah, go ahead. Yes? Your name and the question and to whom it is addressed.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Musa Kana. I'm a public health physician from Nigeria. My question is, what strategy do you have with regards to translation and translation of many of the strategies that you have with, in the context of scaling up to the farmers who live in the real world? Some years ago, one of my sociology teachers told me about the experience we had in Nigeria in 1971-72 when we had a drought. Now, the government has a research institution very close to where I live in Zaria in Nigeria, and the Institute of Agri developed a new drought-resistant seedlings of corn. And when they deployed it to the field, the first year, the farmers accepted it. But by the second year, they didn't want it. And they now realized that they did something very wrong. When they were doing the experiment, with the new seedling, they didn't invite the sociologists who can give them the views of the farmers who are going to use it in the real world. And the views they finally got was that the corn stalk was used at the end of the dry season when they harvest the corn crop. They use it for other purposes like for energy generation and for the use around their homes. They use it to secure their homes. Now, this is one issue that I am concerned because if we don't holistically have a policy that takes care of energy and some other uses of crops that farmers may have, we may be concerned with only one dimension of the problem, which is to feed ourselves. But how about the other issues that go around that, the issues of having like a holistic approach to solving?
I think you have posed the question and provided the answer.
No, not really, not really.
Then I think this, what you said is perfectly correct because it has to be a holistic approach. You have to engage all the stakeholders in this. Of course, extension people are very important, and this is one of the roles that I think has been considered in the strategy for agricultural development in Egypt. I think likewise in other countries it should be really respected, and because they are the vehicle that transmits either the new science and knowledge to the farmer and gets also the reflection on their perception of this. Then I think you have answered this.
Let me make one comment.
Dr. Mahmoud, yes?
Yeah, Dr. Majdi said it rightly, that you did give part of the answer. Whatever you do in technology, you don't have to look only at the impact on one component, whether it is productivity, and you have to look at the production system as a whole. Even when we were talking yesterday with farmers about the broadbed furrow and the increase in wheat productivity, what they did, because now they're saving water and they're saving even the duration of the crop, they are able to grow a catchy crop in between. They call it the Fahl Barsim here, where they can get 17 to 20 tons, isn't it? Okay. This 17 to 20 tons is also the impact of this raised bed furrow. So I think you have to look at any technology that you do in the overall production system, rather than even when we talk about, for example, conservation agriculture, which is zero tillage. You know that farmers in the dry areas, they use all the dry matters, so you cannot leave any mulch, to conserve moisture. So what's really the fate of those small ruminants, animals that feed on these, I would say, straw? So I think you have to look at the whole production system. And let me tell you frankly, unless you involve farmers from the very beginning in what you are doing, there is nothing you can force the farmers. Farmers are very smart. This is what we have to keep in mind. We are scientists, we may know why, but for them, they have gained experience from their grandparents and so forth, and I'll tell you, they know their local circumstances better than we do. And therefore, you have to really combine indigenous knowledge with modern knowledge. If you don't do that, you will not succeed. And I'll tell you frankly, I was so impressed yesterday because we visited farmers that were not involved in the demonstration at all. They were learning from other farmers. And farmers are smart. If you have an incentive in terms of their income, they will go for it. They will go like hotcake. So I think taking them on board from the very beginning in any technology that you do, be sure that they give you wisdom also in what you are developing. And this is one message that I want really to underline based on our experience in ICARDA, where we consider the farmers. We start with the farmer and we end with the farmer in research. Mm-hmm. It's not that we end the research with the farmers. If you don't start with the farmer on needs and problems, you cannot really do the impact.
Thank you, Dr. Mahmoud. I think I have to thank the audience for their, they have been genetically modified for stress tolerance. They survive until almost 9 p.m., which is excellent. And please, I would, the final job I would ask you to do is to join me in thanking the panel for their excellent presentation. Thank you very much.